quickly. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, what we're going to be doing is a pretty simple video. It's a beautiful day out in Western Washington, and we're going to do a pretty simple video on the Trinity Force Silent recoil spring. So this is their kind of answer to a lot of other companies' recoil springs or their silent capture system. So basically you have kind of a piston in the middle or operating rod that your spring works around so that it doesn't interfere with your buffer tube at all and therefore reduces noise. Now, Trinity Force, of course, is a more budget brand. Most of their stuff is made in China. So this is about $40, $40 to $50, depending on where you can find it online. Most of the other ones, Armaspecs, JP Enterprises, range from anywhere from like $75 to like $125. So this is definitely, I think, the lowest one, and I think you can find these for around 40 bucks on the low end. So these are definitely kind of on the cheap end. Overall design actually seems fairly nice, but we're going to go into some of the pros and cons. And right now what we're going to be doing is we have a bunch of ammo with me, and we're going to be seeing how it affects the recoil impulse and of course sound. So right now what I have in here is kind of our control setup. Is I have a Strike Industries flat wire recoil spring and H2 buffer in my 10.5 pistol. So we're going to see how it affects the ejection pattern of ammunition. I have both M193 and Tula steel case ammunition with me, so I'll be able to test a couple different ammunition types. I'll be quiet and I'll let the microphone test the sound difference between the regular spring, a flat wire recoil spring. Pretty much all of my guns have some sort of upgraded buffer and spring system. I don't run any standard carbine springs in any of my guns. But this one here isn't super loud. Let me drop the mag out of here. This one here is not super loud, but it still makes a good amount of noise. So we're going to test it with the silent capture recoil spring after we've done a bunch of other things, see how it recoils. I'm going to do a bunch of slow-mo footage as well, like 120 FPS, and so you can definitely see if there is a difference. If there is, it will probably be very, very minor. Mostly what I'm expecting is to just have a little bit different noise out of it. Alrighty, so first test, we're just going to do 5 rounds, fairly slow at about 10 yards. We have a 10 by 12 target set up about 10 yards away, and we're just going to be, this one here is more for sound, not necessarily for ejection pattern, though we will be able to test the ejection pattern between 2 different optics and see how it goes. Or not 2 different optics, sorry, 2 different recoil systems, and see how it goes. But now I'm going to do 5 rounds pretty quickly. So you could see the ejection pattern on here with steel case ammunition. It ejects at like 330. So now I'm going to do 5 rounds a little more quickly. So this is a very controllable gun. As I mentioned, we have an upgraded recoil system in the back. So we have an H2 buffer. We have a Strike Industries flat wire recoil spring, which gives a little bit different recoil impulse. And we have a Cotton Arms adjustable gas block up front. So it's a little bit smoother all around. Ejects very, very smoothly, so it's a very easy, very fast gun. Very, very controllable. But now we're going to do some slow-mo so you can see what it looks like recoiling in slow motion, and then we will swap out. Well, actually, then we'll do some M193, do kind of the same thing in that, and then we will do the new silent capture recoil system from Trinity Force and see how that does. Alrighty, so now we have some Hornady Frontier FM 193, so it's a little bit hotter ammunition. And we're going to see how this guy does in terms of recoil impulse. Again, we're still running the Strike Industries recoil spring, H2 buffer, so we haven't put in the new one yet. And we'll see how this goes. Going to do 5 rounds really slow, let you hear it a little bit, and then we'll do 5 rounds fast, and then we'll swap over to the Trinity Force system. Okay, so 5 rounds from the low ready position, and we have slow-mo of this. So now we're going to go ahead. That's pretty much everything on the standard recoil setup that I have in here. Now let's go ahead and try the Trinity Force, see how that does. There you go. So in place, pretty easy. Getting it out's a little bit more difficult, but now it's in place. Just test function. It is functioning just fine. It has the operating rod in the middle, which isn't doing anything. It's tightened down. I did actually tighten it before this, so I know that it's not going to blow apart on me while shooting. But now let's go ahead, put the upper back on and see how it does. Alrighty, so now we have the Trinity Force system in. Let me pop out the mag real fast. We are unloaded, but just to let you hear it, of course, because it should be fairly obvious the difference. Very, very quiet, as it should be. Now let's see how Recoil Impulse and everything else is. Now to note, between both of these, I am trying to control the recoil. I am not just letting it recoil. I am actively pulling it into my shoulder, pushing it down so I can shoot and be very accurate. So let's see how it goes. First impressions are that it does actually seem to be ejecting at a little bit more of a straight angle, so as opposed to like 330, more like 3. So that means that it's not pushing quite as hard as the Strike Industries Recoil Spring. That's just right out of the box, first time being shot with it. So now let's go ahead and do 5 really quickly. And I don't really notice any difference, to be honest. There is definitely less noise next to my right ear, which has a microphone in it, so I can pick it up pretty well, which is kind of nice, which is what it's supposed to do. But the Recoil Impulse feels 99% the same. Alrighty, and now we have M193. So that was the steel ammo, and now we have... One thing to note, actually, is that when you just pull it back just a little bit, just to do a chamber check and let go, there's not a lot of pressure at the end of it. So it's pretty soft getting back into the chamber. So that could present some issues if you do a check and it's really like dirty and ground up, just to see if you have a round in the chamber, and it just doesn't quite put it back into battery all the way. So it does seem fairly weak at the end, and this is fresh, brand new, so this isn't like a worn down one. So M193, 5 rounds pretty slow, 5 rounds pretty fast. So, first off, first thing that you notice is that those are ejecting at about 1:30, 2 o'clock. So the spring is certainly a lot weaker. Not a big fan of that right off the bat. Generally speaking, that ammunition was ejecting behind us with the Strike Industries with the H2 buffer, and now we're running I believe it's just a carbine weight buffer and a fairly anemic spring is what it seems like right off the bat. So let's go ahead and do 5 rounds fairly quickly, and these are ejecting now at about 2 o'clock. All right, 5 fairly quickly. Now the recoil on M193 is a little bit sharper, as you would expect. At 10 yards it's still very, very controllable. We have about 50 rounds and about a 6-inch box, so fairly easy to do, but it is definitely more noticeable, especially on the M193, because this spring, let's go ahead and drop the mag and the round in the chamber. This spring is certainly more anemic and less strong, especially this last wave right here. There is almost, like if I just set it there, it won't push it all the way into the chamber. Now if you pull it all the way back and release, of course it'll go into the chamber because it has momentum, but especially that last 1.5 to 2 inches is fairly weak, which means that the Recoil Impulse is a little sharper because it's not quite slowing down that bolt as well as the Strike Industries one is. So now I only have 5 rounds of the M193 left in this magazine, so let's go ahead and do a Slo-Mo of it, just so you guys can see a Slo-Mo of it, and this is still with the Trinity Force recoil system, which is fairly obvious. Alrighty, so right here you can see, obviously this is the first time I've actually taken this optic out. This is a new optic that I'm testing out. You can see it's down a little bit low and right. This is at 10 yards, so there's about 50 rounds in this 5.5-inch circle or so. So just fine at 10 yards, shooting slow, shooting quickly, with a couple different recoil springs. There we go. Okay. So it is a little bit more obnoxious to get out, as you can see. But there are some nice features that it has, like it's a all-in-one unit, so putting it in and out should be fairly simple. The op rod is fairly nice. It's a large piece of steel. You can actually take it apart and service it if you need to, via 2 Allen keys on either side. Nice. The weight itself, which you can move up and down, is pretty light. That is very, very light. Now, something about this is it does actually have a rubber ring around the end that is where you're kind of like an O-ring looking thing for when your bolt carrier slams into it, which is kind of nice. A little bit of padding there. It's definitely not going to hurt. And then it has its actual buffer down here in the base of the system. The problem is that this spring takes very little tension, especially here in the beginning phase. So, and it's overall it's fairly weak as well. Like to do, because this is maximum right here, and that's fairly easy to do. So it's a very, very weak spring compared to a lot of other designs. That coupled with the fact that this buffer is not very heavy at all, means that you get a fairly anemic recoil reduction device, or just recoil device in general. So like I said, this, because it's so light, it probably will induce some failures that wouldn't happen on other systems, more high-end systems. Now, something else to mention is that I do actually have an adjustable gas block on this upper. So something I will do is, now that my recoil device is even more anemic, what I will do is turn down the gas and hopefully still maintain reliability, though we will see. So I am still going to leave this guy in the my 10.5 for a while. Alrighty guys, so there was the initial impressions plus some slow-mo footage comparing the Trinity Force Silent Capture Recoil Spring versus another really nice component, which is the Strike Industries flat wire recoil spring. I love them. They have been 100% reliable. That, along with a little bit heavier buffers, H2 buffers. It definitely has a little bit of a different recoil impulse. The spring rate on them is a lot higher. They're a lot stronger than the spring that's in this system. But that being said, with less spring, now I should be able to turn down the gas a little bit in my system. But the issue that I have there is that spring is just a little bit anemic. Anytime you get reduced power springs, whether it's hammer springs or recoil springs, I get a little bit nervous when running steel cased ammo or anything like that, where it's a little bit harder to cycle, and I'm not sure if that spring will be hard enough to push it into chamber, especially when the system gets a little bit more gummed up. Right now the system's fairly clean, so I could turn down the gas, not really have a lot of issues, but when it gets dirtier, when I fire more rounds through it, will that reliability stay the same? So I prefer having full powered everything in it, including recoil springs. I will probably have it in here for at least 1,000 rounds or so, and I will tune the gas system to the recoil spring, and hopefully it maintains its reliability. Though, like I said, it's fairly anemic for that first couple inches. Now, one of the things that it does say that it does is it's quieter than a regular recoil spring that, you know, scrapes up and down on the inside of your buffer tube, and that is correct, but that's really not a big deal to me anyways. It might be for you if you're trying to go for an ultra silent build, but in a 10.5, 5.56, it's not really going to happen. So that's pretty much it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Please let me know what you guys think of this setup in the description down below, or if you have any experience with silent recoil springs and how they've worked for you. But that's it, so I will see you guys in the next one. Peace off.
Hey you. Yeah, you. What are you still doing here? The video's over. Wait. Why are you still here? Like, share, and subscribe. Or don't. The choice is yours. But if you do subscribe, thanks. And I like pizza. Peace off.